立法會主席。
President.
請議員就座。
Members, please be seated.
請議員立即就座。
Members, please be seated.
法案
Bill first reading. Appropriation Bill 2013. Bill second reading. The Financial Secretary. Mr. President, I move that the Appropriation Bill 2013 be read a second time. Last month, the Chief Executive announced a series of new policies worth $60 billion in the first policy address of the current term government. I shall provide financial resources to fully support these initiatives. In this budget, I'm going to introduce proposals in 4 areas, namely developing the economy, optimizing human resources, investing in infrastructure, and caring for people's livelihood. I shall also share my thinking about future challenges posed by an aging population. The package of measures in this budget will have a stimulus effect of 1.3 percentage points. I hope that with these measures, we shall not only promote economic growth and invest in the future, but also improve employment opportunities and people's livelihood and be to address the aspirations of different sectors of the community. This is my 6th year as Financial Secretary. Looking back, the Hong Kong economy survives a number of major challenges that threaten to bring our external trade and economic growth to a standstill, take unemployment to an all-time high, and see investor confidence fall to an all-time low. I am honored to have contributed and steered through the economic rebound and consolidation shoulder to shoulder with Hong Kong community. But the road ahead remains bumpy. Challenges to Hong Kong's economic growth, commerce and trading, public finance, financial services, land and development matters abound. With resolve and commitment to serve for the coming 5 years, I shall continue to do my level best to nurture and grow our economy, to keep Hong Kong a land of opportunities, a place that values fair and just opportunities while caring for the less privileged, a place where we truly call home. The external environment was unfavorable in 2012. In general, there were setbacks in external trade over the years, but domestic demand was stable. Due to weak demand from the advanced economies, the overall economy saw a sub-trend growth throughout the year. GDP growth for 2012 as a whole was only 1.4%, much lower than the average of 4.5% over the past 10 years. The weak fundamentals of the European and U.S. economies weigh on the trade flows in Asia. Hong Kong's exports of goods declined in the second quarter of 2011. The export performance remained weak in the first half of 2012 and improved slightly in the second half. For 2012, exports of goods saw moderate growth by only 1.3% in real terms. Exports of services were also dragged down by the unfavorable external environment and grew by only 1.2% in real terms in 2012. The domestic sector maintained stable growth in 2012 thanks to a high employment and improved income. Private consumption grew by 4% in real terms for the year. Despite rather cautious business sentiments, building and construction activities as well as machinery and equipment acquisition remained buoyant, further driving up overall investment spending by 9.1% last year. Realizing that our economy was facing a huge downward risk, I introduced a package of measures in my budget last year, which stimulated a GDP growth of 1.5 percentage points. These measures were mainly to support small and medium enterprises, help our people, preserve employment, and lessen the impact of the economic slowdown. The labour market remained stable in 2012, despite a slight rebound in unemployment rate from its low of 3.2% in mid-year to the latest 3.4%. The labour market was still in a state of full employment. There was a real increase in pay in 2012, even though economic growth was slow and the impact of minimum wage has faded. Averaged over the previous year, the pay and wage in the first 3 quarters of 2012 rose by 6.7% and 5.9% respectively, representing increases of 2.5% and 1.9% in real terms after discounting inflation. Inflation has dropped continuously since early last year. This is partly attributed to the reduction in imported inflation due to retreat of international food and commodity prices and easing inflation in our major import sources. Another contributing factor is the slight reduction in local costs as a result of economic slowdown. The headline inflation rate dropped from a peak of 6.4% in the third quarter of 2011 to 3.8% in the fourth quarter of 2012, averaging 4.1% for 2012 as a whole. Netting out the effects of the government's one-off relief measures, the underlying inflation rate fell from 6.4% in the fourth quarter of 2011 to 3.8% in the fourth quarter of 2012, averaging 4.7% for 2012 as a whole. 2013 will be a challenging year. While the U.S. has made some progress in tackling its fiscal problems, the pace of its economic recovery remains slow. Though the European debt crisis has temporarily stabilized, the economies there have already plunged into recession. Japan is beset by high debts, and it is difficult to tell whether the Japanese government's stimulus measures will help renew economic growth. Taking a macro perspective of the world's economy, continued modest growth is expected amid downward risks. The quantitative easing programs launched by the advanced economies facing a prolonged economic downturn will lead to fluctuations in the markets, ultra-abundant liquidity with unpredictable fund flows, and potentially give rise to a stronger protectionist sentiments. This, combined with the various geopolitical factors, will cast negative outlook for global trade. The intricate external environment will remain stable or unstable in the year ahead. The whole world will have to face wars on 3 fronts, namely currency, trade, and geopolitics. As a highly open and small economy, Hong Kong will be impacted by the development of these wars to a certain extent. Fundamentals in Asia remain strong, and the mainland economy regained its growth momentum in the fourth quarter of last year. Barring any abrupt deterioration in the demand from advanced economies, Hong Kong's external trade should see some improvement. On the domestic front, buoyed by the largely stable labour market, local consumption is expected to sustain modest growth. The pickup in construction works and vibrant inbound tourism will remain the driving force of domestic demand this year. I expect a modest improvement in our economy this year and forecast gross domestic product or GDP growth of 1.5 to 3.5% for the year. This growth rate is still lower than the average over the past decade, and there may be some upward pressure on the unemployment rate. The inflationary trend will be affected by the internal and external environments, as well as the overall demand. On the external front, we must not overlook the risk of increasing international commodity and asset prices arising from excessive global liquidity. Moreover, new rounds of quantitative easing in Europe, the US, and Japan may trigger another round of imported inflation. Locally, slow economic growth has eased the pressure on wages. However, given the upcoming upward adjustment to the minimum wage at the middle of this year, coupled with the persistently high rental levels, inflation will face upward pressure. The average headline inflation rate for 2013 is estimated at 4.5%, with the underlying inflation at 4.2%. As the world's economic balance shifts to Asia, Hong Kong should ride the wave of the new order by capitalizing on our unique advantages and exploring new business opportunities to take Hong Kong's economy to new heights. During the budget consultation, many people mentioned the role of the government in the development of a market economy, and the general consensus was that the free and open mode of economic development would have been the key to Hong Kong's success should be maintained. We maintain a simple and low tax regime while prudently controlling government expenditure to leave most of the wealth to the market and the public. Entrepreneurs, investors, and members of the public are free to make their own decisions on business, investment, employment issues, making it possible to use limited resources more effectively. This doesn't mean that the government is merely reactive. In fact, the government has been playing a pivotal role in the market economy, especially in times of market failure, when it takes steps to restore market balance to ensure the community can share the fruits of economic growth. The government acts as a provider of public service, mediator in the allocation of public resources, as well as negotiator in discussions with other governments. As I see it, government participation and market operation are complementary concepts. What matters is how to make the two work together and how to strike a balance between social costs and benefits. The current term government will continue to count on market forces and act in a rational and pragmatic manner in collaborating with the market to grasp development opportunities and create a better business environment to foster robust economic growth underpinned by our established strengths and foundations. The ultimate objective of economic policies is not about chasing after statistics. It is about expanding the scale of Hong Kong's economy, promoting the holistic development of our society, and creating more business and job opportunities so that our people can realize their aspirations and improve their living standards. At the same time, the government will distribute social resources effectively through appropriate policies and measures so that the needy can be provided with appropriate relief and become self-reliant. To promote future economic development, we must work on two areas. First, we must foster our economic integration with the mainland to take advantage of its market development. We know the huge mainland market well. The government will make good use of all government-to-government or G-to-G platform to help Hong Kong enterprises expand their mainland business, channel overseas capital to the mainland market, and support mainland enterprises in going global. More importantly, we must at the same time preserve Hong Kong's characteristics as an international city. We must recognize our biggest advantages: a sound legal system, a level playing field, an excellent business environment. We treasure our core values of individual freedoms, the rule of law, and a clean government, which align us with the international system. We shall support our enterprises by strengthening opportunities in traditional markets, exploring new areas of growth, and opening up more new markets. The Economic Development Commission, established by the Chief Executive, will provide a new platform for the government to work with the market in the promotion of economic development. It will develop ideas, advise on strategies and policies, examine the structure of different industries, and explore measures for their development. Second, we must expand and strengthen our pillar industries to maintain our competitiveness. We must also support the development of new industries, build a more diversified and solid economic base, and provide more career choices for our younger generation to realize their potential. Traditional pillar industries have been the major driving forces behind Hong Kong's economic development. They have clear advantages internationally and are highly competitive. Currently, the four pillar industries, trading in logistics, tourism, financial services and business, and professional services, employ 1.7 billion people, or 48% of the total labor force. These pillar industries contribute to 59% of our GDP. With a large economic base, they serve as a powerful driver for related sectors and the job market as well. I shall now introduce measures to further promote these industries. The trading and logistics industry consolidates different economic and production activities and creates numerous jobs with different requirements for academic qualifications, skills, and experience. The industry currently employs 770,000 workers and contributes to 1/4 of GDP, the highest among the four pillar industries. Due to the changes in market demand, the industry is moving towards the provision of high value-added logistics services. Hong Kong is developing into a regional distribution center for high-value goods, which differs from its conventional role in transporting components, semi-finished products, and finished products. With an efficient intermodal transport network, the status of a free port, and a sound legal system to protect intellectual property, Hong Kong has an edge in handling and distributing high-value goods to markets in the region. Our responsive and efficient logistics enterprises can provide high value added and tailor-made services to cater for the different needs of customers in respect of supply chain management. Our logistics industry has potential to further expand its regional services, thereby strengthening Hong Kong's position as a logistics hub. We need to build the dedicated facilities to help the development of high-value added logistics services, which will help shorten operating time and reduce logistics and inventory costs. We have reserved a logistics site with an area of about 2 hectares at Cheng Yi, which will be put on the market in the first half of this year. We also plan to designate about 10 hectares of land at Tuen Mun West for the development of logistics facilities. This will facilitate clustering of companies involved in various operations and services for the industry. Tuen Mun West is an ideal site for this. Upon completion of the Tuen Mun Chaklap Kok link in 2018, it will only take 10 minutes to travel from Tuen Mun West to the airport. We shall conduct a feasibility study on the proposed development and shall release the logistics sites in Tuen Mun West in phases. Upon completion of the logistics facilities in Cheng Yi and Tuen Mun West, more than 300,000 square meters of floor area and 7,500 new jobs in the various trades will be provided, yielding over $3 billion worth of economic benefits annually. After the 9/11 incident in the U.S., various countries enhanced their air cargo security requirements. It is imperative that our freight and logistics operators make early moves to gain greater international recognition in cargo safety and management. This will facilitate the customs clearance of our export overseas and maintain Hong Kong's competitive advantage as a logistics hub. The Customs and Excise Department launched the Hong Kong Authorized Economic Operator Program last April. The program accredits local companies with sound internal safety and management systems in accordance with international criteria, giving their consignments customs facilitation, including prioritized clearance and simpler inspection procedures. The CNED has liaised with other customs authorities to seek mutual recognition of similar programs so that locally accredited companies can enjoy corresponding preferential treatment outside Hong Kong. The CNED will allocate additional resources to boost companies' participation in the program and promote mutual recognition. To enhance the external connectivity of our transport network, we shall continue to push ahead with the planning and implementation of sea, land, and air transport infrastructure projects. Regarding the proposal of constructing Container Terminal 10 at southwest Cheng Yi, we are conducting a study to examine the technical feasibility and assess the environmental impact of the proposal. The study on the Strategic Development Plan for Hong Kong Port 2030 is also underway to update port cargo growth forecasts and explore how to make better use of the existing port facilities to support the future development. Both studies are scheduled for completion in the first half of this year. In deciding on the need to construct Container Terminal 10, we shall take into account, among other things, the study's results and the economic situation and the views of the stakeholders. On land transport, the local projects of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge are scheduled for completion in 2016 to tie in with the opening of the main bridge. This bridge connection will become part of the strategic road network linking Hong Kong, Zhuhai, Macau, and Shenzhen. The Western Pearl River Delta, or PRD, will fall within a 3-hour commute from Hong Kong. The airport and container ports in Hong Kong can be used for transporting goods from the Western PRD, Guangxi Province, and nearby countries such as Vietnam and Thailand. This will strengthen Hong Kong's position as a trade, logistics, and aviation hub. On air transport, the Airport Authority Hong Kong, or AA, has commenced an environmental impact assessment and other planning for the 3-runway system, which is expected to cope with air traffic demand up to at least 2030. The government will decide on the development of the 3-runway system when all relevant information is available. Supporting local enterprises to tap new markets, facilitating trade flows, and promoting economic development are important roles of the government. The government's work in this area is of particular importance to the development of modern trading and logistics industry. With our country's strong support, Hong Kong has submitted to the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, a request to join the China-ASEAN Free Trade Area to assist our traders to further tap into the emerging Southeast Asian market. ASEAN members states are currently considering our proposed accession and conducting internal consultation studies. We shall continue our lobbying work and collaborate with Hong Kong TDC and local trade associations to organize more business missions and discussion forums to enhance interaction between Hong Kong and ASEAN businesses. Our efforts to tap emerging markets have started to deliver results. Over the past 5 years, with more frequent communication through G2G platforms, the trade in goods between Hong Kong and the BRICS countries grew substantially by over 40% in value. Among the BRICS countries, our bilateral trade with India registered cumulative growth of over 90%, while that with Russia even increased by 1.5%. To further diversify Hong Kong's export network, we shall continue our efforts to promote Hong Kong in and strengthen trade links with emerging markets. Tourism is another mainstay of our economy, employing some 230,000 people, accounting for 4.5% of GDP. In 2012, there were over 48 million visitors to Hong Kong, an increase of 16%. Despite the gloomy global economic outlook, total spending associated with inbound tourism increased 16.5% to exceed $300 billion. Buoyant tourism will undoubtedly put pressure on our control points, hotels, tourist attractions, and shopping centers. To sustain the healthy development of tourism industry, we need to devote more efforts to enhancing tourism infrastructure, hotel supply, market promotion, and service support, etc. Last year, I announced that the government would look into the further development of the Ocean Park and Hong Kong Disneyland. Ocean Park is the winner of the prestigious 2012 Applause Award, the first ever Asian attraction to be recognized as the best theme park in the world. To further enhance its facilities, Ocean Park will build an all-weather water world at Chi-chuen. The government will offer a $2.3 billion loan to Ocean Park to spur early commencement of the project. We shall submit funding proposals to the Finance Committee in the next few months. In the coming few years, Hong Kong Disneyland will launch a new nighttime parade and put in place a themed area featuring Marvel heroes, the first of its kind in the world. These new projects will be funded by Disneyland's operating surplus. Meanwhile, the two theme parks are actively pursuing new hotel projects to provide better complementary services for tourists. The terminal building and the first berth of the Kai-Tak cruise terminal will be commissioned in the middle of this year. Preparations are in full swing now for the terminal to receive its first liner, Mariner of the Seas, with a capacity of 3,840 passengers on June the 12th. Meanwhile, we're actively working with the Hong Kong Tourism Board to promote cruise tourism and collaborate with the travel trade and neighboring ports on itinerary development and regional cooperation. We aim to exploit the potential of cruise tourism in Asia Pacific and attract more high-spending cruise trip visitors to Hong Kong so as to reinforce our position as a regional cruise hub. Increasing the supply of hotels will help enhance receiving capacity and service quality. Currently, there are over 210 hotels in Hong Kong, providing more than 60,000 rooms. The government has been working to make available more hotel rooms through various measures, including providing hotel-only sites. As at end 2012, 13 applications for redevelopment or wholesale conversion of industrial buildings into hotels were approved by the Lands Department. It is estimated that some 10,000 new hotel rooms will be provided this year and next year. Following my proposal to extend the operation of the Mega Events Fund last year, we sponsored several major international events, including the Hong Kong Dragon Boat Carnival and the Hong Kong Open Championship Golf Tournament. We shall continue to sponsor more international mega events to be held in Hong Kong through the fund and use the existing mechanism to subsidize mega events hosted by local non-profit making organizations. In recent years, our neighboring cities have organized mega events such as the Formula One races and overseas NBA games. We shall take the initiative to seek to host more mega events. In the coming few years, large-scale tourist facilities will come on stream, and there will be major events funded by the Mega Events Fund or hosted in other forms. I believe the tourism industry will continue to flourish and spur the growth in other service sectors, including food and beverage, retail and transport, creating many employment opportunities.
Hong Kong is an international financial center, and the financial services industry underpins our economy. The industry employs 230,000 people, or 6% of the total workforce. It is a high value-added industry that contributes 16% to GDP. It is also a major client of professional services and drives growth in other consumer industries. Maintaining the competitive edge of our financial services industry is crucial to economic development. The focus of developing the industry is the diversification of its business and products. The total value of fund assets under management in Hong Kong is more than $9 trillion, ranking second in Asia. As the global economic balance shifts more towards the east, Asia is experiencing some of the fastest wealth growth in the world. We shall seize this opportunity to further develop our fund and asset management business. To strengthen its position as a premier international asset management center, Hong Kong will provide relevant legal and regulatory frameworks and a clear and competitive tax environment with a view to attracting more funds of various types to base in Hong Kong to broaden the variety and scope of our fund business. Hong Kong domiciled funds will drive demand for professional services such as fund management and investment advice, as well as legal and accounting services. To attract more private equity funds to domicile in Hong Kong, we propose to extend the profits tax exemption for offshore funds to include transactions in private companies which are incorporated or registered outside Hong Kong and do not hold any Hong Kong properties nor carry out any business in Hong Kong. This will allow private equity funds to enjoy the same tax exemption as offshore funds. We shall conduct consultation on the amendments to relevant tax legislation and detailed proposals. At present, investment funds established in Hong Kong can only take the form of trusts. As an international financial center, Hong Kong should provide a more flexible business environment for the industry to meet market demand. To attract more traditional mutual funds and hedge funds to domicile in Hong Kong, we are considering legislative amendments to introduce the open-ended investment company, an increasing popular form used in the fund industry. We are discussing the relevant legal and regulatory frameworks with regulators. The public will be consulted once a proposal is drawn up. To expand the distribution network of Hong Kong's fund industry, the Securities and Futures Commission is studying with the mainland authorities an arrangement for mutual recognition of funds. The arrangement will attract more funds to establish in Hong Kong and foster the development of those professional sectors engaged in the registration, investment management, and sales of funds. In addition, the government has introduced 2 bills into this council with a view to enhancing Hong Kong's competitiveness in the development of Islamic finance and facilitating the development of trust services industry in Hong Kong. As the mainland experiences rapid growth in wealth and a steady opening of its capital market, the Qualified Domestic Institutional Investor Scheme, QDII, which allows investment of mainland capital in offshore financial markets, is expected to be further relaxed. This will help the growth of the private wealth management business in Hong Kong. The number of private banks in Hong Kong has increased from 27 at the end of 2007 to 41 now. To tie it in with the development of private wealth management, the government and the regulators will continue to support the work of the sector in setting up a trade association, taking forward programs relating to the accreditation and enhancing the training of practitioners. The government is seeking to introduce a bill into the council within this year to establish an independent insurance authority to align the insurance regulatory regime in the local insurance industry with international practices. This will facilitate the development of the industry and protect the interests of policyholders. Many large enterprises in Asia are keen to run their own captive insurance companies to insure against their business risks. To attract more enterprises to form captive insurance companies in Hong Kong, I propose to reduce the profits tax on the offshore insurance business of captive insurance companies such that they will enjoy the same tax concessions as those currently applicable to reinsurance companies. Attracting a cluster of large-scale captive insurance in Hong Kong will promote the development of other related businesses, including reinsurance, making Hong Kong's risk management services more diversified. Hong Kong is now the world's largest and most efficient offshore renminbi business hub, with the world's largest offshore pool of renminbi. Total renminbi deposits and outstanding renminbi certificates of deposits stood at 720 billion renminbi at the end of 2012. Hong Kong also serves as a platform for enterprises and financial institutions all over the world to carry out various financial activities such as renminbi payments, financing, and investments. Renminbi trade settlements conducted through Hong Kong banks in 2012 exceeded 2,600 billion renminbi, a year-on-year increase of 37% and representing over 90% of the mainland's cross-border trade settled in renminbi. The renminbi bond market also showed continuous growth. At the end of 2012, outstanding renminbi bonds issued in Hong Kong exceeded 230 billion renminbi, an increase of 62% over the end of 2011. Since the launch of the renminbi Qualified Foreign Institutional Investors Scheme (RQV) at the end of 2011, the range of offshore renminbi investment products has been broadened. Among them, exchange-traded funds tracking the A-share indices have been well received by the market. We shall continue our dialogue with the relevant mainland authorities to expedite the next stage of RQV's expansion, which will include extending the pilot scheme to qualified Hong Kong financial institutions. These measures will promote the circulation of renminbi funds and diversify the development of renminbi investment products. We shall continue to strengthen our market's infrastructure and stay connected with other financial centers in the world with a view to further enhancing the use of renminbi for trade settlement, financing, and investment at the international level, consolidating Hong Kong's position as an offshore renminbi business center. The Basel Committee on Banking Supervision announced in early January the details of the revised regulatory liquidity standards of Basel III to be implemented progressively between 2015 and 2019. The Hong Kong Monetary Authority, HKMA, is assessing the impact of the revision on the local banking sector to draw up a corresponding implementation plan for industry consultation. We shall devise regulatory rules that suit our financial markets and business environment to promote the stability of our banking system. Since the launch of the government bond program in 2009, the systematic offering of bonds has attracted local and overseas investors to the Hong Kong bond market and expanded the investment base. As at early February this year, outstanding bonds issued under the program totaled about $70 billion. Given the situation of global financial markets, there has been a sustained growth in the demand from investors and financial institutions in Asia and other emerging markets for high-quality public debt papers, including Hong Kong dollar government debt. I hope that the government bond program can be expanded to meet the criteria of certain global benchmark bond indices to attract more investors. To further promote the sustainable development of our bond market, I propose to expand the size of the government bond program from the current $100 billion to $200 billion to provide adequate room for the program to continue in the next 5 years. We shall move in due course an amendment resolution in this Council to raise the maximum amount of borrowings under the government bond program. The government also issued 2 sets of inflation-linked retail bonds, I-bond, under the government bond program. Both the total amount of applications and the total application amounts for the I-bond issued last year set a new record for local retail bonds, reflecting the investing public's greater awareness of and interest in retail bonds. To maintain this growth momentum, I propose launching a further I-bond issue of up to $10 billion under the government bond program. The I-bond, with a maturity of 3 years, will target Hong Kong residents. Interest will be paid to bondholders once every 6 months at a rate linked to the inflation rates of the last half-year period. The HKMA will announce the details in due course. I have to point out that the further issuance of I-bond is a measure to address the current low interest rate environment. It is a non-recurrent measure. In the long run, the government will not confine bond issuance to a particular type of bonds. We shall develop different types of bonds for a more diversified bond market in Hong Kong. Over the past 10 years, the number of local internet banking accounts has increased at an average annual rate of 22% to over 8 million at present, with an average transaction volume of around $4 trillion per month. Shopping and bill payment on innovative online and electronic payment platforms are becoming increasingly popular. The development of electronic payment instruments and retail payment systems can make payment processing more efficient for companies, especially those in the retail industry. Such development will encourage local enterprises to extend their global sales networks and stimulate the growth of other ancillary trades, including electronic transaction services and computer system developments. When considering possible amendments to the legislation to introduce a licensing regime for stored value electronic money and to empower the HKMA to supervise the relevant retail payment systems, which will help establish a sound regulatory regime for Hong Kong. Given the rapid developments in the global financial markets, the government needs to tap advice from market experts. The chief executive has announced the establishment of the Financial Services Development Council, a high-level cross-sector advisory body to offer views and suggestions to the government on developing and promoting our financial services industry, as well as reinforcing our position as an international financial center. With some 470,000 employees and accounting for 12% of GDP, business support and professional services are another pillar industry of the Hong Kong economy. They comprise a wide range of professional and supporting services for business activities such as legal, accounting, architecture, engineering, planning, surveying, human resources, management consultancy, technical testing, product development and distribution, market research, conference and exhibition, and information technology. Apart from serving local enterprises, Hong Kong's business and professional services are also exported to the mainland and other areas in Asia. We shall continue to assist these service industries through the relevant G2G platforms. Under the National 12 Five-Year Plan, the mainland will devote greater resource efforts to developing modern service industries to lift the share of the service industries in the economy by 4 percentage points by 2015. Such a scale of expansion far exceeds Hong Kong's GDP in 1 year. This will present vast business opportunities to the sectors concerned in Hong Kong. For continuous enhancement of the CEPA mechanism, Chief Executive has announced that the Hong Kong SAR government and the Ministry of Commerce will set up a joint working group to assist the sectors concerned to solve problems they encounter in gaining access to the mainland market under CEPA. Apart from building on our own traditional strengths, we also give strong support for the development of emerging industries to further diversify our economy so that Hong Kong can better respond to the world's ever-changing economic environment. Over the past couple of years, the government has promoted 6 industries where Hong Kong enjoy clear advantages. These industries employ 420,000 people, or 12% of the total workforce, and contribute to 8.5% of GDP. The government will keep an eye on the development of new industries and proactively provide appropriate support for emerging industries with the potential to flourish. On nurturing emerging industries, the efforts of the government and industries concerned have borne fruit. Among the emerging industries, the cultural and creative industries employing 190,000 persons have been taking up an increasing share of GDP, which now approaches 5%. To the credit of these practitioners, they have won numerous international awards and accolades. Apart from the film industry, other industries in the sector also made impressive achievements. Despite the global economic slowdown over the past few years, our design and architecture sectors have, during the 5 years leading up to 2011, achieved an average annual growth rate of 20% in terms of value added and 5% in terms of the number of practitioners. Another notable achievement is that local advertising companies scooped a total of 60 awards in 3 different international advertising competitions. In 2011, local enterprises spent more than $35 billion on advertising, an increase of 16% over the previous year. The local advertising industry continues to boom, employing 18,000 people and bringing $6.8 billion worth of economic benefits. With the huge domestic demand in the mainland as a result of sustained economic growth, our cultural and creative industries have great development potential. We shall continue to provide strong support for the industries with a view to opening up more business opportunities and markets. In recent years, Hong Kong has played host to a number of art fairs, which have attracted many well-established art galleries from different corners of the world. We shall host a number of world-class art fairs again this year, including Art Basel Hong Kong, inaugural show in Asia. These major events will help pull overseas and local art-related participants and foster interaction and exchanges among them. Successful art fairs will also facilitate art and cultural development in Hong Kong and highlight our potential as an international art metropolis. To foster the development of visual arts and nurture local talents in the field, we're converting the clubhouse of the former Royal Hong Kong Yacht Club in Oil Street, North Point, into a visual arts exhibition and activity centre. I also propose additional funding of $50 million for the Leisure and Cultural Services Department to acquire local visual artists' outstanding artworks and to commission works for exhibition under public art schemes. These are set to promote the profile of local artists and bring their works to the attention of the art market. Today, many internationally renowned scholars work in local universities to conduct research. Their efforts to contribute to the development of Hong Kong's research and development R&D capabilities. Top researchers working in our universities and enterprises have won numerous awards. Last year, 56 Hong Kong scientists were approved by the State Ministry of Science and Technology for inclusion in the National Science and Technology Program's expert database. They are now qualified to participate in the compilation of the application guide and project assessment for national science and technology programs. Internationally, the interactive intention-driven upper limb training robotic system, a project under the Innovation and Technology Fund, was awarded the Grand Prix du Salon International des Inventions de Genève in the 40th International Exhibition of Inventions in Geneva in 2012, making it the first invention from Hong Kong to receive the grand prize. In my view, if we can transform technology research outcomes into products with market potential, coupled with industrial production, our technological development can make even greater contribution to Hong Kong's economy. To facilitate the technology transfers and the realization of R&D results, 6 local universities have set up their own technology transfer offices to deal with the complicated process of commercializing R&D results. I propose that these 6 universities be each provided with a subvention of up to $12 million through the ITF for a period of 3 years from 2013-14 onwards to support the work of their technology transfer offices. Technology and product R&D will stimulate the development of intellectual property trading. Hong Kong has a sound regime for the protection of intellectual property rights and is well equipped to develop into a regional intellectual property trading hub. The Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development will lead a working group to study the overall strategy for promoting Hong Kong as a hub for intellectual property trading. SMEs are an important pillar of Hong Kong's economy and employment market. They form the majority of enterprises in Hong Kong and employ over 1.2 million, or half the private sector workforce. In the face of persistently weak export markets and a challenging external environment, we shall assist SMEs in 6 areas to help them raise capital and tap new markets. A. I propose to extend the application period for the special concessionary measures under the SME Financing Guarantee Scheme for 1 year to the end of February 2014. Last year, the government provided a total guarantee commitment of $100 billion for the Hong Kong Mortgage Corporation Limited to introduce special time-limited concessionary measures to offer guarantees with a high guarantee ratio of 80% at the concessionary fee rate. Introduced in May 2012, the measures have been well received by the trade. Up to the end of January, over 5,400 applications have been approved, benefiting more than 4,000 enterprises with total loan guarantee of more than $24 billion. B. We shall continue to make use of the $1 billion BUD fund set up last June to assist Hong Kong enterprises to enhance their competitiveness in the mainland through upgrading and restructuring, developing brands, and promoting domestic sales in the mainland. The fund has since received more than 500 applications. C. The Hong Kong Trade Development Council will set up more design galleries in mainland cities other than Beijing and Guangzhou to offer platforms for Hong Kong enterprises, especially SMEs, to showcase their products. This will help Hong Kong enterprises gain access to the mainland market and build up greater awareness of Hong Kong brands there. D. I propose to increase the cumulative amount of the grant for SMEs under the SME Export Marketing Fund from $150,000 to $200,000, subject to the meeting of relevant additional conditions. The fund subsidizes SMEs' export promotion activities, including trade fairs, exhibitions, business missions, and advertising. E. On the 1st of March, the Hong Kong Export Credit Insurance Corporation (ECIC) will introduce a small business policy (SBP) scheme for Hong Kong enterprises with an annual business turnover of less than $50 million, providing exporters with more flexibility in taking out insurance cover. Within a period of 2 years from the 1st of March 2013, SBP policyholders will enjoy waiver of annual policy fee and up to 20% premium discount. On the 1st of March this year, the ECIC will upgrade the ratings of Turkey and the Philippines following the rating upgrades countries including Russia, Indonesia, and Peru last year. The ECIC will raise the insurance limits of these countries accordingly and provide higher credit limits and lower premium rates for exporters to these countries. I hope that these 6 supporting measures for SMEs will help keep their business running, create more employment, and enhance our people's jobs security. The importance of education is beyond question. Investing in education enhances the knowledge of both individuals and the community at large. Through skills training, people can acquire the tools for self-reliance to improve their livelihood and realize their goals. For the community as a whole, a diverse pool of talent can promote social mobility and sharpen competitiveness, providing a long-term economic driver. I shall now put forward measures to invest in education and optimize Hong Kong's overall manpower structure. Estimated recurrent expenditure on education for 2013-14 is $63 billion, which is more than 1/5 of recurrent government expenditure. It is the biggest expenditure area amongst different policy area groups. A quality teaching force is the key to the quality of education. I propose to inject an additional $480 million into the Hong Kong SAR Government Scholarship Fund, GSF, to set up scholarships for outstanding local students to take degree courses or teacher training programs in prestigious overseas universities. I expect that about 20 scholarships will be awarded each year. Students who receive the awards must undertake to teach in Hong Kong upon graduation for at least 2 years or a period equivalent to the duration of receiving the scholarships. Hong Kong is an international city. Our people should possess good language proficiency. The Language Fund, set up in 1994, provides financial support for projects and activities aimed at promoting biliteracy and trilingualism among our people, including programs to support non-Chinese speaking students in learning Chinese. I propose to inject $5 billion into the Language Fund to facilitate its long-term planning. In the 2011-12 academic year, nearly 500 students with special education needs (SEN) enrolled in locally full-time accredited sub-degree and degree programs. As compared with their peers, students with SEN encounter more difficulties in learning and have to apply themselves more diligently. I propose to make 2 separate injections of $20 million each, bringing the total to $40 million into the GSF and self-financing post-secondary education fund to establish scholarships to give recognition to deserving tertiary students with SEN in the pursuit of academic and other excellence. I expect that about 100 students will be awarded scholarships every year. I also propose to allocate $12 million to the Vocational Training Council each year to purchase equipment and learning aids for students with SEN, providing them with psychological and student counseling services, and enhancing the support for teaching and learning. Vocational and academic qualifications are equally important for personal development. The government launched the Qualifications Framework, QF, in 2008, embracing qualifications in the academic, vocational, and continuing education sectors and establishing flexible learning pathways with multiple entry and exit points. Industry Training Advisory Committees, ITACs, are set up on the QF to develop the specifications of competency standards, SCS, and to promote and implement the QF within the industry. The QF also provides a platform to facilitate the development of diverse pathways for career progression, and practitioners can receive recognition at various levels based on their prior practice and experience. To further enhance the knowledge and skills of workers in the industries and their competitiveness in the labor market, I propose to allocate $10 million per year to support the ITACs to launch new initiatives. These include A. introducing award schemes for outstanding practitioners to engage in learning activities in different places around the world. B. Designing SCS-based training programs and package that meet the needs of the industries. And C. Stepping up promotion and publicity of the QF for its wider acceptance among all sectors. So far, 19 industries have set up their ITACs, covering 46% of the local workforce.
The sustained development of all sectors hinges on quality workers. Some sectors, including the construction, retail, catering industries, have experienced labor shortage in recent years. Members of these sectors have urged the government to follow other countries' example and allow large-scale labor importation. In my opinion, the shortage problem facing some sectors is caused by the surge in labor demand arising from the rapid development, coupled with the fact that a labor mismatch does exist in the labor market. Hong Kong's economic growth has been driven by economic upgrading and restructuring for many decades. We have a flexible labor market where the quality of labor keeps improving to meet the needs of a changing economic structure. We should first consider how to provide more suitable training programs and complementary measures to channel more workers to these sectors. This is to make good use of local labor to enhance the productivity of the whole community. No doubt, local workers should be given priority for quality employment opportunities in all sectors. However, I understand that there may be transitional labor shortages for some jobs in certain sectors, or even longer-term shortages in the number of obnoxious trades. The government will follow its existing policy and mechanisms in dealing with labor importation. A long-term labor shortage will hinder the development of industries, affect the employment market, and even dampen our economic vibrancy. We must find a right match between the industries and the workforce. Trade associations and stakeholders of some industries have been forthcoming with proposals to improve training and labor supply for their respective industries. A feasible option for attracting new blood into the industries is to develop structured training programs that link up enrollment of trainees, vocational training, job attachment, and job matching. Such training programs should be coupled with appropriate subsidies such as incentives and effective publicity. These will allow more young people and their families to have a better understanding of the industries concerned. Take the construction industry as an example. The efforts on training made by the industry in recent years have begun to produce results. The industry's coordinating body, the Construction Industry Council, or CIC, has all along been striving to enhance training for the construction workforce. I allocated a total of $320 million in 2010 and 2012 to support the CIC's labor training, which includes granting subsidies to contractors to employ trainees on a first hired then trained basis to enable them to gain actual work experience on construction sites. Training allowances are provided for those trades facing labor shortages to attract new entrants. More than 2,000 training places have been provided by the CIC so far, and about 60% of the trainees are aged below 35. We shall also step up our promotion efforts to attract ethnic minorities to join the industry. Thanks to the systematic labor training provided by the CIC and the rollout of major infrastructure projects in the past decade, the employment situation of the construction industry has improved notably. The unemployment rate dropped substantially from the post-financial tsunami, 12.8% to the latest 5.1%, and the average monthly income has increased steadily to $13,000. Some of the trades have even seen an appreciable increase in the income of their workers. I encourage other industries in keen demand for labor to follow the example of the construction industry in launching systematic training plans and initiatives to bring in more new recruits. As elaborated by the Chief Executive in his policy address, further enhancing Hong Kong's status as an international shipping center is one of the government's priorities. The the shipping industry offers plenty of quality job opportunities with promising prospects. The shipping companies registered in Hong Kong own and manage a total of about 2,000 merchant ships, which make up 10% of the world's merchant fleet. There are about 700 shipping-related companies in Hong Kong offering a wide range of services such as shipping management, agency, finance, legal services, and arbitration, and a large number of jobs. At present, the Hong Kong International Airport offers more than 60,000 jobs. To support training for the local shipping and aviation industry, I propose to designate $100 million to establish a training fund for maritime and aviation transport, so as to sustain and expand various schemes and scholarships and to implement other new initiatives. This will help attract young people to enroll in related skills training and degree programs and join the industry upon graduation, providing a wealth of vibrant and competitive talent for the industry. The retail industry accounts for about 4% of GDP and employs over 300,000 people, while the robust development of tourism should mean more business opportunities. The retail industry suffers from an increasing shortage of labor, with the current vacancy rate standing at over 3%. Difficulties in retaining and recruiting quality people have an imminent impact on the service quality of the industry and may adversely affect economic development. To facilitate its healthy growth in the long term, I shall set up a task force on labor development in the retail industry. Led by the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau, the task force will pool the efforts of the government, the industry, and the relevant organizations. It will study the economic outlook of the industry and its labor demand and supply. The task force will complete its work within this year and put forward appropriate and concrete recommendations. Over the years, the Employees Retraining Board, ERB, has strived to improve the employability of local workers. Through a variety of courses under the Manpower Development Scheme, the ERB offers placement-tied courses for the unemployed and job seekers, and courses which assist employees to enhance their skills, making it easier for them to move up the job ladder in various trades. In 2013-14, the ERB will offer 130,000 training places. Resources have also been reserved to provide an additional 40,000 places to meet the demand from training providers for increasing and redeploying places. Levy on employers of foreign domestic helpers is the major financial source of the ERB. In his policy address, the Chief Executive announced the abolition of the levy. We have to provide sustained and stable financial support for the ERB so that it can continue to enhance the productivity of local workers. I propose to inject $15 billion into the ERB to provide it with long-term support. To foster economic development and enhance quality of life for our people, we shall continue to plan and take forward infrastructure developments. The estimated capital works expenditure for 2013-14 exceeds $70 billion. By late March 2013, our total commitments for capital projects are expected to be over $310 billion. As for traffic infrastructure, the construction of the 5 new railway lines is now underway. Our railway network will extend to Sai Ying Pun and Kennedy Town in 2014 and further to Kwok-hung and Ap Lei Chau, as well as Ho Man Tin and Wang Po in 2015. The construction of the Sha Tin to Central Link, a railway that traverses the territory, has commenced and will be completed in phases in 2018 and 2020. Upon completion, our railway network will cover an area within which over 70% of Hong Kong's population lives. Major road projects include the Central Wan Chai Bypass and Island Eastern Corridor Link. Upon completion in 2017, the existing traffic congestion from Central to Wan Chai and the adjoining areas will be alleviated. We shall seek funding approval for the detailed design of a second tunnel linking Tseung Kwan O and urban Kowloon. We also plan to commence construction of the Tuen Mun Chak Lap Kok link within this year. The southern connection will be commissioned first to tie in with the opening of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge in 2016, followed by the northern connection. As for healthcare, the construction of the North Lantau Hospital was completed in late 2012, and the hospital will come into operation in phases this year. The expansion of the Tseung Kwan O Hospital and the Phase 2 redevelopment of Caritas Medical Center will also be completed in 2013 and 14, respectively. We are preparing for the redevelopment of Queen Mary Hospital, Kwong Wah Hospital, and United Christian Hospital. The estimated costs will be as high as $25 billion. In addition, we plan to use $20 billion for the construction and refurbishment of several public hospitals and clinics, including the construction of Tin Shui Wai Hospital and the Center of Excellence in Pediatrics, the refurbishment of Hong Kong Buddhist Hospital, as well as the reprovisioning of the Yau Ma Tei Specialist Clinic. The government will continue to provide various sports facilities for the public. The new indoor heated pool complex at Victoria Park is expected to come into operation in the third quarter of this year. We shall seek funding approval for the construction of an indoor stadium with a heated pool in Cheng Yi. Upon completion of the project, there will be 25 heated pools for public use in Hong Kong. Construction works of the velodrome in Zhengguanou will be completed in the second half of this year. We're also taking forward in phases the development of a cycle track network connecting the East and West New Territories. The construction of the Ma'anshan Shangshui section is expected to complete by end 2013. We plan to seek funding approval this year to construct part of the Shangshui Yunlong section. We shall continue to invest in environmental infrastructure to improve our environment. On water quality, we have completed the Harbour Area Treatment Scheme Stage 1, and there has been significant improvement in overall water quality of Victoria Harbour. Stage 2A of the scheme, a $17.6 billion project, is scheduled for completion in 2014. To further reduce waste at source, we are pressing ahead with the first phase development of organic waste treatment facilities in Shuhou 1, Lantau. Scheduled for commissioning in 2016, the facilities will convert food waste into energy and compost products. We've also earmarked $500 million to set up waste electrical and electronic equipment processing facilities, as well as 5 community green stations to encourage public participation in waste reduction and recycling. Fresh water resources in the mainland are limited, and the demand for Dongjiang water in Guangdong province is on the rise. In the face of scarce resources, we must encourage our people through public education to save water and explore new water sources so as to ensure sustainable supply for Hong Kong amid climate change and population growth. Last year, we started a detailed planning and investigation study, including an assessment of the feasibility and cost effectiveness for the construction of a desalination plant on a reserve site in Zhengguanou with a view to tapping seawater as water source. Although the anticipated output capacity of the desalination plant will only account for 5 to 10% of Hong Kong's total water consumption, we hope that as technology advances and costs go down in future, seawater desalination can serve as another water supply source and help reduce our reliance on other water sources in the long term. With the major infrastructural projects entering their construction peaks, it is estimated that capital works expenditure will increase to over $70 billion for each of the next 5 years, far exceeding the average annual expenditure of about $40 billion in the past 5 years. These large infrastructural projects create a large number of jobs, which are particularly crucial in times of uncertain economic outlook. The Chief Executive detailed in his policy address specific measures to increase land and housing supply. I shall continue with my coordination work to expand the land reserve as in the past 2 years. I shall also allocate additional resources to the relevant departments to increase their manpower in order to speed up land supply. I shall allocate $4.5 billion in the coming 5 years to carry out studies and design work and progressively roll out the land development projects relating to reclamation outside Victoria Harbour on an appropriate scale, opening the new development areas and the development of caverns. Regarding land supply for private housing, the government's aim is to maintain, on average, the provision of land for building about 20,000 residential units each year. The government will continue to increase land supply in the coming year. In 2013-14 land sale program, we shall include 46 residential sites, which is capable of providing about 13,600 units in total. Amongst these sites, 28 are new sites. We shall continue the practice of announcing government-initiated land sale arrangements in advance on a quarterly basis and exercise flexibility in supplying housing land in the light of market demand. In the coming year, all the major sources of land supply for private housing together which include the government land sale program, railway property development projects, projects of the Urban Renewal Authority, and lease modification land exchanges or other private developments, will provide land capable of building some 25,800 private residential flats. The Secretary for Development will announce the land sale program for the coming year tomorrow. On public housing, we have provided the Housing Authority with adequate land to build 79,000 public rental housing flats within 5 years from 2012-13 and about 17,000 homeownership scheme flats within 4 years from 2016-17. I announced 2 demand-side management measures last Friday. It'll be to cool down the overheated property market. I will not repeat the details of these measures today. Increasing supply is the key to solving the housing problem. In the next 3 to 4 years, it is estimated that a total of 67,000 first-hand units would come onto the private residential property market, the highest since September 2007. These include 4,000 unsold units in the completed projects, 48,000 unsold units under construction, and 15,000 units to be constructed on disposed sites. As for the supply of private residential flats in 2013, I estimate that 24,000 first-hand units can be offered for sale this year, including 12,000 uncompleted units, for which we are speeding up the processing of the pre-sale consent application, 8,000 uncompleted units ready for pre-sale, and 4,000 unsold units in completed projects. Developers usually adjust the pace of sales according to market appetite and may not put all the 24,000 units on the market this year. However, we are sure that the supply of first-hand units has seen a rebound. As the external economic environment remains volatile, I would like to remind people once again that interest rates are susceptible to various external factors and will resume an upturn cycle in the future. Before making a home purchase decision, people should assess their ability to afford the property, particularly whether the family income can support mortgage payments if mortgage rates are to revert to a normal level. Apart from housing land, the government is also committed to increasing the supply of commercial land to provide room for further development of different economic activities in Hong Kong. Rentals of Grade A offices started to drop last year. This had much to do with external slowdown and uncertain outlook. The 2013-14 land sale program will include 9 sites for commercial business use and 1 hotel-only site, providing a total floor area of about 330,000 square meters and some 300 hotel rooms respectively. We shall expedite the development of the Kowloon East Core Business District. Upon completion, it will be able to provide an office floor area of 4 million square meters. In addition, we are considering speeding up the release of 2 clusters of government sites for commercial development in Kowloon East, including assessing the feasibility of relocating government facilities there. The 2 clusters of sites will provide a floor area of 500,000 square meters. We will also discuss with AA ways to accelerate the development of North Commercial District of Chek Lap Kok Airport Island. There is a huge demand for office space in the Central Business District, or CBD, in Central. We shall continue to relocate government departments from the CBD to release more office space to the market. The relocation of the ICAC to North Point has freed a prime site at Murray Road. Upon completion of the zoning procedures, the site can provide some 40,000 square meters of Grade A office space. The completion of the new trade and industry tower at the Kai-Tak development area by end 2014 will release more than 18,000 square meters of floor area in the trade and industry department tower in Mong Kok for commercial use. The Department of Justice plans to relocate to the old central government offices in 2015, vacating its offices in Queensway Government's offices for use by other government departments currently occupying commercial office premises in Central and Admiralty. This will release office space in the districts to the market. By then, the floor area of our leased office space in Central and Admiralty will reduce from the present level of over 2,700 square meters to less than 230 square meters. We are now proceeding with the relocation of departments in the 3 government office buildings in Wan Chai waterfront. This is a large-scale project involving 29 departments and more than 10,000 staff. Upon the relocation in phases of government departments to new government office buildings in West Kowloon, Kai Tak, and Zhongguanou. We shall rent out the office space released to increase the supply of Grade A offices in Wan Chai. We shall put up the 3 government office buildings in Wan Chai for sale in due course, which is expected to provide a floor area of 175,000 square meters. Social welfare, education, and medical services are the major spenders of public resources. In 2013-14, estimated recurrent expenditure in these 3 areas will approach $170 billion, or 60% of recurrent government expenditure. This is an increase of $55.1 billion, or 50% compared with 2007-08. I've already covered the government's plans to invest in education, optimize human capital. I shall now focus on the major initiatives in social welfare, healthcare services, and environmental protection. We've been investing heavily in regular welfare programs and services covering major areas such as the provision of social security assistance, support for the elderly, persons with disabilities, families, children, and young people, and the promotion of women's interests. In 2013-14, our recurrent expenditure on social welfare is expected to reach $56 billion, an increase of 31% over that for last year. The elderly are the major beneficiaries of social security payments. To enhance the quality of life for elderly people aged 65 or above who are in need of financial support, we shall start making payments for the old age living allowance this April. The new allowance, involving the additional allocation of about $8.3 billion in 2013-14, is expected to benefit more than 400,000 elderly people. On elderly care services, the 5 new or improved measures coming on stream in 2013-14 include A. Allocating $380 million from the Lotteries Fund to launch the first phase of the pilot scheme on community care service voucher for the elderly this September. By adopting the money follows the user approach in the provision of assistance, eligible elderly people under the scheme can choose the community care services that suit their individual needs. B. Allocating additional recurrent funding of $9 billion to add 100 daycare places and extend the service hours of new daycare centers and units for the elderly. C. Increasing recurrent funding by $73 million for the additional provision of some 600 subsidized residential care places for the elderly through the construction of 3 contract residential care homes for the elderly, purchase of additional EA1 places under the Enhanced Spot Play scheme, and making better use of space in subvented homes. Together with those subsidized residential care places with funding earmarked earlier, 2,300 additional subsidized residential care places will be provided from 2012-13 to 2015-16. D. Allocating additional recurrent funding of $164 million to increase the subvention for 7,000 residential care places with continuum of care by 10%, so that RCHEs can provide more targeted services for the elderly, and to upgrade 7,850 ordinary residential care places in subvented RCHEs to places with continuum of care. And E. Allocating $160 million in the 5-year period from 2013-14 for the Social Welfare Department to organize 10 more classes of 2-year full-time enrolled nurse training programs for the welfare sector to cope with the expansion of residential care services. The programs will provide more than 1,200 training places to augment the enrolled nurses' supply to meet manpower demand in the welfare sector. Recurrent expenditure on rehabilitation services for persons with disabilities in the coming year will reach $4.4 billion. New services will be introduced in 2013-14 in the following 5 areas. A. Allocating additional recurrent funding of $35.6 million to strengthen the care and training for persons with disabilities by providing 145 new places each for residential and day training services. B. Allocating additional recurrent funding of $67.9 million to increase the manpower of residential care homes and day training centers for persons with disabilities to meet the needs of aging service users. C. Allocating additional recurrent funding of $203 million to regularize the home care service for persons with severe disabilities and to extend the home-based care services to all districts to cover persons with severe disabilities who are living in the community, regardless of whether they are on waiting lists for places in subsidized residential care homes. D. Allocating additional recurring funding of $4.8 million to enhance vocational rehabilitation services and employment support by increasing the job attachment allowance and wage subsidy under the on-the-job training program for people with disabilities, and the Sunny Way on the job training program for young people with disabilities, and E. Allocating an additional funding of $5.9 billion to acquire 6 additional buses, thereby increasing the fleet size of rehab bus to 135 to better meet the special transport needs of persons with disabilities. The Community Care Fund was established by the government in early 2011, with the government's $5 billion injection into the fund and the donations from the business sector. The fund has launched a total of 18 programs to offer appropriate time-limited assistance to over 100,000 people in need, including those not covered by the government's safety net. I propose to inject an additional $15 billion into the fund. This, together with the original $5 billion government injection, is expected to generate an annual investment return of over $1 billion. I believe that the Commission on Poverty, or COP, will make effective use of this injection to renew its efforts to alleviate poverty by plugging the gaps in the existing system and continue to implement and enhance those programs that have proved to be effective but have yet to be incorporated into the government regular assistance and service programs. It will also introduce new assistance programs or pioneer projects. The Mandatory Provident Fund, or MPF, which has been in place for 12 years, is one of the 3 pillars of existing retirement protection system. We are now working with the MPF-A on short, medium and long-term fee reduction measures. They include promoting electronic platforms, consolidating employees' accounts, and rationalize the types of and numbers of MPF funds in order to reduce the administration costs. Meanwhile, we aim to cut down the fees and charges by maximizing market forces. The MPFA is preparing proposals regarding the implementation of a cap on MPF fees that will be introduced in the case of market failure. We intend to consult the public within this year. In the past few years, there have been considerable discussions on retirement protection. The Social Security and Retirement Protection Task Force under the COP will study this complicated issue in depth. I hope that the community will explore the issue in a rational, pragmatic and prudent manner and with due regard to the sustainability of public finances and the possible financial pressure on our future generations. Mr. Kwok-hung, you have to leave the chamber straight away. Mr. Kwok-hung, leave the chamber. Will members please remain quiet? Financial Secretary. Thank you, President. The recurrent expenditure on medical and health services for 2013-14 will reach $49 billion, an increase of $2.7 billion over 2012-13. The bulk of the additional funding is for the new recurrent allocation to the hospital authority to enhance and expand appropriate public medical services. To cope with the ever-increasing demand for medical services, the HA will add 290 acute patient beds and convalescent beds and increase the quota at general outpatient clinics for patients with episodic diseases in the coming year. The HA will also refine the waiting list management of specialist outpatient clinics to shorten the waiting time for such services. On elderly medical services, the HA will strengthen the treatment of degenerative diseases to meet the service demands of an aging population. the government is committed to promoting mental health and has in recent years introduced various initiatives to enhance community support for mental patients with a view to facilitating their rehabilitation and reintegration into the community. To enhance community support for patients with severe mental illness, the HA launched the Case Management Program in April 2010, which now covers 12 districts. Since its launch, the program has provided intensive and personalized community support for over 11,000 mental patients. The HA will roll out the program to 3 more districts in 2013-14 and achieve full coverage in the coming 2 years. Additional funding of $12.5 million will be allocated to the Social Welfare Department to increase the staff resources of the Integrated Community Centers for Mental Wellness to dovetail with HA's program. Also, we plan to use $8 billion to redevelop Kwok-hung Hospital to strengthen care and support for mental patients. In the next financial year, we shall allocate an additional $44 million to include in the HA drug formulary 2 chemotherapeutic drugs for cancer treatment and expand the application of the 2 special drugs for patients with advanced Parkinson's disease and cancer. Following the injection of $10 billion into the Samaritan Fund by the government last year, the financial assessment criteria for drug subsidies were relaxed last September to benefit more patients in need.
Environmental protection and conservation is one of the major policy areas in the policy address. Improving the environment is vital to the sustainable development of Hong Kong, for which we need the shared commitment of both the community and the government. Our next priority will be to improve roadside air quality. In his policy address, the Chief Executive proposed setting aside $10 billion as subsidies, coupled with regulatory measures, to progressively phase out heavily polluting pre-Euro 4 diesel commercial vehicles. I've already earmarked resources for this proposal, on which the Environment Bureau is now consulting this council, the relevant transport trades, and other stakeholders. The Chief Executive also proposed in his policy address to inject $5 billion into the Environment and Conservation Fund to provide support for green projects initiated by the community. I've made a provision for the fund to further enhance public awareness of environmental protection, conduct related scientific research, and encourage public participation in environmental protection activities. During the budget consultation, political parties and members of the public made many suggestions on relief and concessionary measures. They have diverse views on whether we should continue the one-off relief measures implemented in the recent years. I understand that members of the public, especially the grassroots, hope that the government will help ease the heavy burden and pressure on them. Some, however, opine that one-off handouts are undesirable, as resources should be expended to implement appropriate policies to provide recurrent support to the needy. I must stress that the allocation of resources by the government is based on the principle of policy leads and financial resources follow. For one-off measures or otherwise, the use of all government expenditure should be strictly subject to the same principle of fiscal prudence. We must commit our resources only when justified and needed. Every dollar should be spent on appropriate measures and not squandered. One-off measures from a micro perspective can help ease the community's burden and are counter-cyclical from a macro perspective for coping with short-term economic fluctuations, maintaining spending power and supporting the employment market. The measures I proposed in last year's budget had a stimulus effect on GDP that helped maintain local economic growth and a low unemployment rate. In the year ahead, having regard to the uncertain external outlook and the risk of rising inflation caused by quantitative easing measures in various countries, I consider that we still have to introduce some stimulus measures. I've also been listening to the voices of people from the middle class. They have expressed to me the heavy burden they have to bear in coping with expenses on rent, medical care, support for their parents, children's education, etc. They hope that I would consider specific tax measures for them. I agree that middle-class families should be given some support. However, as one may appreciate, it is impractical for the government to respond to each and every demand. the government must take into account its overall financial commitments and the fairness of resource allocation. I am inclined to adopt a simple and direct approach through one-off tax reduction and increase in tax allowance as a response to various aspirations of the middle class. Many business chambers and SMEs have also told me that increase in rentals and other costs have posed difficulties to the operation of enterprises. They propose that the government should introduce relief measures, including lowering the profits tax rates for SMEs with profits below a particular level. I've given due consideration to their proposals. Profits tax revenue is now sourced from a handful of enterprises, while nearly 90% of companies do not have to pay tax. There will be practical difficulty in applying different tax rates to those tax-paying enterprises, and this will complicate our simple tax regime. The low profit-making enterprises will not benefit much as a result. Having regard to the implications of the tax proposals on individual enterprises, our tax base, and tax revenue, I'm inclined to adopt a simple and direct approach through one-off tax reduction to meet the aspirations of our business sector. I propose the following one-off measures. A. Waiving rates for 2013-14, subject to a ceiling of $1,500 per quarter for each rateable property. It is estimated that around 75% of the properties will be subject to no rates in the year. This proposal will cost the government $11.6 billion. B. Reducing salaries tax and tax on the personal assessment for 2012-13 by 75%, subject to a ceiling of $10,000. The reduction, benefiting 1.53 million taxpayers in the territory, will be reflected in the taxpayers' final tax payable for 2012-13. This measure will cost the government $8.4 billion. C. Granting each residential electricity account a subsidy of $1,800. This will cost the government $4.5 billion. D. Providing an extra allowance to Comprehensive Social Security Assistance (CSSA) recipients equal to 1 month of the standard rate CSSA payments, and an extra allowance to old age allowance, old age living allowance, and disability allowance recipients equal to 1 month of the allowances. This will involve an additional expenditure of $2.7 billion. E. Paying 2 months' rent for public housing tenants. The government will pay 2 months' base rent for tenants who are required to pay extra rent to the Hong Kong Housing Authority. For non-elderly tenants of the Hong Kong Housing Society's Group B estates, the government will pay 2/3 of their rent for 2 months. This measure will involve an expenditure of $2.2 billion. F. I extended and improved short-term food assistance services through the additional funding of $100 million made in my last budget. The Labour and Welfare Bureau will seek this Council's approval for the provision in the next financial year. When necessary, the government will allocate another $100 million for the services. And G. Giving all student loan borrowers who complete their studies in 2013 the option to start repaying their student loans 1 year after completion of studies. This will alleviate the financial burden of fresh graduates. To alleviate people's burden in raising their children and to encourage self-education and lifelong learning, I propose A. Increasing the basic and additional child allowances from the current $63,000 to $70,000 for each child. After the adjustment, the allowance for babies born in 2013-14 will be $140,000 for the year. This measure will benefit 300,000 taxpayers, estimated to cost the government $410 million a year. And B. Raising the deduction ceiling for self-education expenses from $60,000 to $80,000. This measure will benefit 6,000 taxpayers, estimated to cost the government $10 million a year. In the face of the unstable external economic environment and increasing operating costs, apart from the 6 support measures for SMEs that were mentioned earlier, I propose the following 2 one-off measures to help our enterprises. A. Waiving the business registration fees for 2013-14 to benefit 1.2 million business operators. This proposal will cost the government $2.1 billion. And B. Reducing profits tax for 2012-13 by 75%, subject to a ceiling of $10,000. The reduction will be reflected in the taxpayers' final tax payable for 2012-13. This proposal will benefit 119,000 taxpayers who are liable to profits tax, costing the government $1 billion. The above 11 relief measures, involving $33 billion, should be able to help ease the pressure on our middle class, grassroots, and SMEs. The average life expectancy of Hong Kong people is continuously increasing. We must not overlook the challenges posed by an aging population. Last year, the number of elderly people aged 65 and over was 980,000. Financial Secretary, please pause here. Mr. Albert Chan, please leave the chamber immediately. Mr. Albert Chan. Mr. Chan Chi-chuen, please leave the chamber immediately. Financial Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President. The average life expectancy of Hong Kong people is continuously increasing. We must not overlook the challenges posed by an aging population. Last year, the number of elderly people aged 65 and over was 980,000, representing 14% of our population. This proportion continues to rise. According to the latest projection, the number of elderly people will increase significantly to 2.56 million by 2041, representing 30% of our population. As for the elderly dependency ratio in Hong Kong, 10 persons of working age, i.e. people aged 15 to 64, supported one dependent elderly person financially in the early 1980s, but the ratio has dropped to 5 persons supporting one dependent elderly person now. After 20 years, the ratio will further drop to just 2 persons supporting one dependent elderly person. The increase in the proportion of elderly population will result in a surge of expenditure on healthcare and welfare. Moreover, a fall in the proportion of working population will reduce economic vibrancy and slow down the momentum of economic growth. These developments will have profound implications for the sustainability of government revenue and public expenditure. Judging from the current demographic trends, our economic growth will certainly continue to taper off in 2020, and the growth rate will be much lower than the trend growth rate of 4.5% over the past 10 years. Our resource inputs in healthcare and social welfare represent 40% of recurrent government expenditure at present. Taking the spending on elderly care for 2012-13 as an example, the estimated expenditure in this area, including the provision of social security elderly services and healthcare services, has reached $43.4 billion, accounting for 16% of recurrent government expenditure. This spending will inevitably increase significantly with an aging population because there will be substantial rise in the demand for patient beds, residential care homes, and community elderly care. With an increase in the number of the elderly, a shrinking working force, reduction in the number of taxpayers, and decelerated economic growth, I expect that the growth of government revenue will drop substantially if our tax regime remains unchanged. Meanwhile, expenditure on welfare and healthcare will soar. We may not be able to make ends meet. Some may think that the purpose of building up ample fiscal reserves is to provide a sufficient reserve capital for Hong Kong when our recurrent revenue is not sufficient to cover expenditure. I'd say this is not wrong, but it's a rather one-sided view. Of course, we can draw on our reserves to tackle short-term financial fluctuations, yet fiscal reserves is not the regular revenue. It is all that we have at our disposal. The reserves can be exhausted. Prolonged depletion of the reserves to meet our ever-increasing recurrent expenditure is not sustainable. Recurrent expenditure must be funded by sustainable revenue. Apart from meeting our expenditure on public services, fiscal reserves also serve as a buffer in times of economic downturn. Take the 5-year deficit between 1998 and 2004 as an example. Our fiscal reserves dropped from an amount equivalent to 28 months of government expenditure originally to a level of 13 months of expenditure in 2004. Besides, we have not deducted the government's known liabilities, commitments, and various contingent liabilities from the fiscal reserve figure that is familiar to you. These include capital projects costing over $300 billion, guarantees of $100 billion, and statutory pension with a present value of about $600 billion. Although we do not need to settle them in lump sum within a short period of time, we must not overlook our liabilities and commitments behind the reserves when assessing the Hong Kong SAR's overall financial position. Looking globally, many economies are also facing the problem of soaring public expenditure in the long run. Some countries use the resources available to plan for the future through saving up part of the fiscal surplus or other receipt and assets. I shall set up a working group to be led by the Treasury branch. Scholars and experts will be invited to join the working group to explore ways to make more comprehensive planning for our public finances to cope with the aging population and the government's other long-term commitments. The working group will report to me by the end of this year. Government expenditure has more than doubled from nearly $200 billion in 1997-98 to over $400 billion in 2013-14, while recurrent expenditure has almost doubled from $150 billion to over $290 billion. However, GDP has grown by only 60% for the same period. The use of public resources has always been guided by the principle of pragmatism. Resources are allocated in accordance with actual needs and priorities, taking into account fiscal sustainability. When implementing new policies and measures, especially those involving long-term financial commitments, the government must consider them thoroughly and conduct appropriate consultation in advance. Fiscal sustainability and prudent management of public finances require us to strictly contain the growth of government expenditure. We must not increase expenditure without good cause or without regard to our low tax regime. Our revenue, now amounting to about 20% of GDP, is unlikely to achieve significant growth. Our public expenditure, on the other hand, has stayed at around the same level at recent years. As we are obliged to uphold the principle of keeping expenditure within the limits of revenue, the government would need to increase revenue if we want to increase expenditure. This would mean raising taxes or resorting to borrowing. Both options are controversial. Tax hikes will overhaul our simple and low tax regime, which has been the key to our success, and undermine Hong Kong's overall competitiveness in the longer run. This will also adversely affect our community and businesses. We must carefully assess the pros and cons in considering any proposal to increase tax. In the wake of the financial tsunami, many European countries and the US have fallen into financial difficulties. The major causes are the prolonged mismanagement of public finances by their governments and overexpanded welfare measures. Beset with huge debts from overspending, these countries eventually find themselves in a dire financial crisis and have to cut the deficit through fiscal austerity. Hong Kong must draw a lesson from them. We must maintain effective fiscal management and fiscal discipline by adhering to the principles of keeping expenditure within the limits of revenues and allocating resources where they're required. Any indiscriminate increase in expenditure will only impose a heavy burden on our next generation. We need to ensure that the government has a stable income by preserving tax revenue and adhering to the user pays principle. Tax revenue, accounting for more than 60% of the total government revenue, exceeds $280 billion in 2013-14. Of this, 2/3 will come from direct taxes, i.e. profits tax, tax on the personal assessment, property tax, and salaries tax, and the remaining 1/3 from indirect taxes. For example, rates, motor vehicles, first registration tax, and duty on dutiable commodities. On the premise of maintaining the existing low and simple tax regime, we shall strive to prevent revenue losses on payable taxes. To this end, the government will examine the tax information stated by taxpayers through an audit and investigation mechanism. Back tax is assessed and penalties are imposed on cases of understatement or omission. In 2011-12, the Inland Revenue Department (IRD) collected back tax and penalties of about $6.8 billion, which was 76% higher than that of the previous year. The IRD will continue to combat combat tax evasion and avoidance, and strive for greater effectiveness by making better use of information technology, reinforcing staff training, and adjusting investigation strategies. Regarding indirect taxes, the annual revenue from tobacco duty and motor vehicle first registration tax is over $4 billion and $7 billion, respectively. We notice that the main modus operandi of selling illicit cigarettes has recently changed from street peddling to telephone order, making law enforcement more difficult. On the other hand, some dealers provide false information on the selling prices of vehicles to evade motor vehicles first registration tax, which reduces our tax revenue. To protect the revenue from tobacco duty and motor vehicles first registration tax, the CNED will deploy more resources to step up its efforts to combat tax evasion in the coming year. The provision of government services is generally charged in accordance with the user pays principle. There are thousands of fees and charges, including all types of licensed fees and other fees related to the issue of identity documents, registration, etc. The cost recovery rate for some items is as low as 30%. The rate for more than 1,000 fees and charges has not been adjusted since reunification. In 1997-98, government services with charges determined on a cost recovery basis generated nearly $12 billion in revenue, equivalent to 4% of government revenue. In 2011-12, revenue from this source dropped to only $10 billion, or a share of only 2% of revenue. To prevent cost recovery items being turned into heavily subsidized items, we need a systematic review. I shall ask all policy bureaus and departments to review their respective fees and charges and submit plans for their revision for the coming 1 or 2 years. We shall first deal with fees that have not been revised for years and do not directly affect people's livelihood. For examples are fees for pesticide permits, riding establishment licenses, and temporary permits for exhibition of animals and birds. We shall also deal with items which have low cost recovery rates, such as fees for visas or licenses for storage of dangerous goods. The government will make appropriate fee revisions as and when necessary. There will not be substantial revisions at one go to avoid affecting people's livelihood. We shall also strictly control costs and reduce the need for increasing fees and charges as far as possible. I hope that the community will consider our proposals for fee revisions in a fair and objective manner. When I prepared the 2012-13 budget early last year, I made a prudent forecast for government revenue in view of the global economic downturn, sluggish export, and local economic slowdown. 1 year on, my forecast about the economic conditions has proved to be accurate. However, our actual revenue from various items now exceeds the original estimate. Despite the economic fluctuations last year, local enterprises showed strong resilience. Revenue from earnings and profits tax is $24.8 billion higher than the original estimate. With the government stepping up land sale to increase land supply, revenue from land premium has also increased by $9.1 billion compared to the original estimate. Given hectic trading in the property market in the first 3 quarters and a bullish stock market in the 4th quarter of this year, stamp duty revenue is $6 billion higher than the original estimate. Moreover, the dividend from the West Rail Property Development Limited is about $10 billion higher than the original estimate. Taking all these into account, the revised estimate for government revenue for 2012-13 is $445.5 billion, $55.2 billion higher than the original estimate. As for government expenditure, I forecast a revised estimate of $380.6 billion, 3% or $13.1 billion less than the original estimate. For 2012-13, I forecast a surplus of about $64.9 billion. By 31st of March 2013, our fiscal reserves are expected to be $734 billion, equivalent to 36% of GDP or 23 months of government expenditure. Operating expenditure for 2013-14 is estimated to be $352 billion, and recurrent expenditure will be $291.3 billion, representing an increase of 15.5% and 10.5% respectively over the revised estimate for 2012-13. It is estimated that capital expenditure will be $88 billion, including $70.1 billion on capital works. I forecast that total government expenditure will reach $440 billion, an increase of 15.6% compared with the revised estimate for 2012-13. Public expenditure will be equivalent to 21.7% of GDP. The increases in expenditure, both total and recurrent, for 2013-14 far exceed the estimated nominal GDP growth of 5.5% in 2013. This clearly demonstrates that the current term government upholds the principle of committing resources as and when needed to provide appropriate services for the community. Total government revenue for 2013-14 is estimated to be $435.1 billion. Earnings and profits tax, estimated at $189.4 billion, will be our major source of revenue. Land revenue is estimated at $69 billion. Taking all these into account, it is expected that a small deficit of about $4.9 billion will be recorded in our accounts in the coming year, and we shall largely achieve fiscal balance. Fiscal reserves are estimated at $729.1 billion by the end of March 2014, representing approximately 34% of GDP, or equivalent to 20 months of government expenditure. For the medium term, the annual average growth rate will be 4% in real terms for the 4-year period between 2014 and 2017, while the underlying inflation rate will be average 3.5%. The operating account will see a surplus for the period between 2014-15 and 2017-18. With expenditure on infrastructure projects ever increasing, a deficit will arise in the capital account for the whole period. Fiscal reserves are estimated at $850.3 billion by the end of March 2018, representing 31% of GDP, or 21 months of government expenditure. Mr. President, since Hong Kong's return to the motherland, Hong Kong has experienced several periods of ups and downs, including 2 shattering financial crises. Thanks to the sound institutional framework and stable economic foundations built up by generations of Hong Kong people over decades, we were able to ride out the storm. It was not by chance that we were immune from the big cuts in public expenditure that the US and most European countries have been forced to make because of their severe fiscal deficits. By developing the economy and creating wealth, we can provide opportunities for everyone to realize his aspirations and live a better life. This is why the government has always attached importance to economic development. Hong Kong is now a fairly mature economy. Compared with the rapid growth in the 1970s and 1980s, we are unavoidably slowing down. Nevertheless, in the face of keen global competition, we must still endeavor to look for new growth areas. Otherwise, we can only mark time rather than stride ahead and will lag behind others. When I was young, our living environment was inferior to that of today, and many families lived in squatter areas or resettlement areas. They might not even have gas, electricity, or water supply at home. Family members used to sleep on makeshift plain planks or canvas beds. Every morning they woke up, stretched their backs, and went to school or work. Today, our living environment has improved considerably. We should not, of course, apply the standard in the past to judge the quality of life today. Similarly, civil society has evolved rapidly and brought with it changes in our social values. Hong Kong people, especially our younger generation, aspire to live in a society which values equality and justice for all, with dignity and respect for each individual, and care for the disadvantaged. I'm all for this. An ideal society hinges on having the right conditions and resolving the core question of where to get the resources required. A politician once said, "Keep your eyes on the stars and your feet on the ground." This comes as a timely reminder for today's Hong Kong. Put simply, we must take the pragmatic way. Wealth redistribution seems to be a quick fix to improve the livelihood of the grassroots. But the lesson in Europe in recent years tells us that welfarism is not sustainable. It has long been my steadfast belief that we can provide everyone opportunities to change his life through developing the economy, creating quality employment opportunities, investing vigorously in education and training to increase social mobility. I trust that this is also a common value for all of us. In almost every movie and TV drama series featuring Hong Kong, you're likely to come across these scenes: queues of vehicles along roads and crowds of pedestrians jostling against each other amidst a hustle and bustle of the city. You can feel a unique buzz. Call it hectic or even chaotic. In Hong Kong, everyone is free to live his own way and make his own choice. While our 7 million people may have 7 million different lifestyles, seemingly unconnected to each other, we share the same vision and values that unite us and drive us to forge ahead. Hong Kong people of different generations and backgrounds are all positive, optimistic, and resilient. We strive for continued improvement and never yield to fate. I believe we shall build a better and brighter future together. Thank you, Mr. President.
I now propose the question to you, and that is that the Appropriation Bill 2013 be read the second time. In accordance with the rules of procedures, the debate on the second reading of the Appropriation Bill 2013 is now adjourned, and the estimates are referred to the Finance Committee for examination before the debate on the bill resumes. Members' motions. Honourable Andrew Leung will move a motion